Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful March the 31st, 2020. Round of the Portes, Big C. I know you're out there mining for gold. I kind of feel like Wakanda, they didn't know it existed. He either found the vibranium or he found something out there, but I know he's looking for the real McCoy. It's all fair in love and war. He'll be back in the saddle soon. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google. And Alexa, just say Google. Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away. And he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way that is growing with Big C Sports. Everybody has a TV. In fact, I was talking to my internet provider today, and also, my TV. I do a lot of streaming too, but I still have a hookup to a box with Comcast. And she asked me if I had a smart TV. And I said, aren't they all smart, Big C? So anyway, I thought that was funny. I would have kind of felt pressure to say, yeah. It's like if someone at a school district that you want to enroll your kids into a private school and they ask, do you have smart kids? Who's going to say no to that one? Of course, we have smart kids and smart TVs. It's all fair. To make sure that we give out our moment to pause, the Veterans Crisis Line, to help people going through problems. And a lot of people are going through problems right now, but they are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones. And if you just make the call, it doesn't have to be the person going through it, but sometimes it's people that you know. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can hopefully get some help. A lot of people really are going through some challenges with this coronavirus. I just make sure that people, I can only do my part. I make sure my family's taken care of, checking on my mom every day, and people that I love, just let them know how are things going, and everybody doing okay. And that's something that we all can do. Oftentimes, we hear a stranger tell us to check on people, and people check on people that they don't know, but you got to check on people you love too. That's all fair in love and war. I make sure I get that message out there too. Also, really looking forward to launching a real estate TV show in the spring of 2020, already underway in some markets. I know with all the talk of the governor saying, practice safe distances, and a lot of people aren't going into open houses anymore, and that's why I think it's a great time to put your real estate transactions on television, because most people can do the e-commerce anyway. They just call in and they can go online and get the loan application or get the listing package by email, and they can actually see the TV channel where your property is shown. So launching in spring of 2020, already underway in some markets. The goal is simply to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sporting events do it whenever they're not on the pause, Big C. And so you could do it too. Let your real estate go to work for you. Right now is a great time to refinance. A lot of people can get in to that side of business and save some money on their homes. And I know we're part of that $6 trillion stimulus package, the coronavirus stimulus package. There's money in there to help homeowners. Now, I implore you to check with your lender, because this money's not here yet from what I understand. It may take sometime by the end of April from what I'm hearing, but they were telling you that there are major banks whether it's a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America or a Chase or Citi, they're waiving mortgage payments from 30 to 90 days. Well, and I think it may apply to rent also, because people that you rent from oftentimes got to pay a bank for the rent money. But you want to make sure that you call the person that you're paying money to, call your lender, and see if it's okay for them to defer your payment to the back of that loan. And if they can do that, then they'll oftentimes send you that in writing, not just some customer service person, working in a different part of the world saying, oh yeah, you don't have to pay anything. You want to make sure you do that, because that's so important. And I want to make sure we talk about that too. We do that on our show. And so that's my part. Keep yourself safe, wash your hands, do everything you can to keep yourself healthy. And if you need any help or know anyone going through some issues, they can call that line. We talk about so many things in sports. Canada, I love Canada. Toronto is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Well, today, Toronto, Canada, they banned all public events until June 30th. And when you think about Toronto, it's a great city, the home of the defending world champion, NBA champion, Toronto Raptors. But they have a lot of sports teams in Canada. They're all affected by it. Toronto Raptors of the NBA, Toronto Blue Jays of Major League Baseball, the Toronto Argonauts of the Canadian Football League, and that league also is on pause. They usually kick off right around the month of June. So everybody is still, we're all dealing with it. Maybe we'll have the chance to have some action in the summertime for some of our sports teams, but we got to deal with health first. Also, the Toronto Maple Leafs, that affects everybody. There's a park called Jurassic Park up in Toronto. Whenever the NBA Finals were going on last year, and we saw the Golden State Warriors, and of course they were all like the patchwork kids, Humpty Dumpty fell on the wall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty back together again. And so that as the Warriors were all beaten up, Toronto came in there with Kawhi Leonard and got that championship. But when you think about it, what's going on, even in Toronto, Canada, they're all telling people that you have to put your health first. And with the latest coronavirus pandemic, a lot of mild cases and moderate symptoms for a lot of people. For some, especially older adults and people with existing, or what they call existing health problems, pre-existing conditions that the POTUS is trying to slap out of Obamacare, and that can cause some fatalities also. The White House projecting between 100,000 plus, fatalities. And now, that just came out. We don't know what's going to happen. I just hope that science and through prayer that we get a hold of this. And I know some people want to put their head in the sand. I even listen to a lot of sports brethren on different platforms. I've been doing that since really I was about 14 years old. And that's amazing in today's climate, where some people will call into a sports show and say, I can't believe you guys don't just talk about sports and who won a game. It's like knuckleheads. There aren't that many games going on, if anything, outside of maybe someone playing a video game. But that's always fair in love and war. People have their own thoughts about that. Dr. Anthony Fauci is helping to lead the United States effort. He says just make sure you stay informed of what's going on. And I know some people want to put their head in the sand, and that's okay too, because maybe that's what you need to get a hold of whatever you feel your peace of mind comes from. Some people, their peace of mind comes from reading and being knowledgeable. As the Navy hospital ship, the USNS Comfort, is docked in New York right now, and it's helping to alleviate some of the stress that hospitals are dealing with. Central Park, New York Central Park, they've also set up, tents to help people also alleviate some of the issues that people don't want to hear about. Some people don't care, and that's why the people perish for lack of knowledge, because a lot of people are just knuckleheads. They don't know what's going on. They don't want to know what's going on. It gets in the way of them having a libation, and they just want to keep their head in the sand. But I don't want to be that kind of a sports program. So for those of you, as they always used to say when I was growing up, if you have any young adults in the room or young children in the room, then have them leave the room now, because, they're going to give you some information that might scare some people. But I believe if you're well informed, as a lot of our sports brethren are, then it keeps people safe. The NHL, National Hockey League, they pushed back to April 15th for self-quarantine of players and staff. The NHL, they extended their guidelines for players and staff to self-quarantine. And that's until April 15th it is possible for the coronavirus pandemic, it could push back even further. I know today POTUS announced, I believe, with the help of medical science, and what a fresh way to look at things, to count on medical science to help us figure out what to do. But they're pushing back till, I believe, the end of this month for the United States of America. And everybody has their own thoughts, whatever their country's going to do. I believe most smart people, they're prescient enough to follow the medical science. Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley confirmed the extension up to the Associated Press in an email that's today. It adds an extra 11 days to the previous guidance of April 4th, which is what a lot of people were looking at. And that's the last week. And then that's the way they were thinking about that. So it's pushing out. Again, as Dr. Fauci says, the pandemic will determine when people will play games. So that's important to say too. Even if you're someone who's not well read, if you can at least Google, COVID-19 coronavirus.gov or .org or whatever websites they're on, check with your local cities and see what you can do to keep your family safe. And the sports leagues are doing that. It's ironic. As I heard a sports program today, and they had a caller call in and said, why are you guys not just talking about sports? And then the sports guys, the smart ones, the teams, they are also focused on the pandemic and how to keep not only their families and themselves, but their athletes and their fans safe. But you still have some knucklehead fans that will call in and say, why are you guys talking about the most important thing going on in today's time? Well, the sports teams are talking about it. The NHL put its season on pause March 12th with 189 regular season games remaining. Commissioner Gary Bettman said that he was optimistic of resuming some play this season and awarding Lord Stanley's Cup to somebody. That would be great. I'm looking forward to that too. I know a lot of people are. Depending on how the country in the world handles the virus, I think there's a possibility of playing by the end of June, July, August, maybe. Washington Capitals general manager Brian McKellen said Monday. So even some of the sports fans that are calling in some talk shows that let people call in, and they're saying, man, I'm tired of hearing about, politics. I'm tired of hearing about the news. Can't you just tell me who won a game? Well, even the guys who run the leagues are saying they want to do what it takes to keep even knuckleheads safe, okay? Several things have to happen first. President Donald Trump extended the U.S. social distancing guidelines through the end of April, and the NHL said it will evaluate the situation 45 days into the CDC's 8-week recommendation, Centers for Disease Control, and that's against gatherings of 50 people plus until it runs out through mid-May. So everybody has to just realize that we're all in this together. Got to figure it out. So far, 4 NHL players, for some of the fans that said, why are you guys talking about this stuff? It scares me. I'm scared. I don't want to hear about it. Well, 4 NHL players have tested positive for COVID-19, 2 each from the Colorado Avalanche and the Ottawa Senators. As some sports brethren are entertaining callers that say, I don't want to hear about this stuff, then just put your head in the sand. Just put your head in the sand as the fire's burning up the house and you don't want to do anything to keep yourself safe. Put your head in the sand and hope that it misses you too. And so everybody knows you have your own choice of where you get your information. There's so much going on in this great country. I love being a part of it. I love being a part of whatever solution we have out there. And sometimes that means you got to be the grown-up in the room. Just like I believe in POTUS is starting to get some of that. I don't know if he's reading the teleprompter, but I was just noticing. I think everyone should stay abreast of what's going on in Washington, D.C., especially if you're an adult. If you're just a child and want to play in the sand, that's okay. But if you're an adult, it's good to do that. And it seems like, we got to all come together, no matter what party affiliation. But it seems like POTUS, more and more, is listening to medical science. That thing about Easter, this thing being over with, he's way past that now. And so that's light at the end of the tunnel, because whether you're for him or not, it's still good to have support for our nation's leaders. That's so important. I don't want to be like Mitch McConnell, hoping that somebody's a one-term president. You can Google when he said that. Canadian Football League, we love Canada. They're weighing the options for the 2020 season amid the coronavirus chaos. That's CFL football. They've been around over 107 years. They had the 107th Grey Cup just last year. And so with the schedule to start in the CFL less than 3 months away, the league has been forced to plan for the worst. You plan for the worst and you hope for the best. The coronavirus pandemic has thrown the entire sporting world into chaos, shows no signs of really letting up, and the NHL's already canceled 3 major events that were scheduled for the month of June. So the same month the CFL, Canadian Football League, was scheduled to begin, it looks increasingly like the league will be able to complete a full season in 2020. Maybe. That's with a lot of scientists saying if they could just find a way to treat coronavirus, and with vaccines that they already have been, I guess, given and tested and tried for different diseases. But I know there's 2 ways anyone on medication knows. It doesn't have to be a cure for it, but if you can treat it. High blood pressure, from what I understand, there are no cures for high blood pressure, but there are treatments for high blood pressure. I don't believe there's any cures for diabetes, but there are treatments for diabetes, and obviously there allegedly is no cure for some forms of cancers, but other cancers that can be cut off your body. So everybody has to get in touch with their medical, their medical doctors if they can, and figure out what they can do to see what's going on in solving this pandemic. I also want to just take a little side note, and as I was saying, really over the last year, that ask for God's providence in so many things. I know oftentimes people don't even think about prayer until something goes wrong and they have some calamity or someone gets sick, and then they want to get on the knees and pray and ask God for providence. Well, I believe in prayer. That's my opinion. And some people that don't, that's their choice too. There's agnostics and there's atheists. They have every right to be that. But Pope Francis also held a prayer and asked for, God's providence to help solve this problem and find a cure to coronavirus. And I believe in that too. So I thank Pope Francis for doing that too. I've been talking about that for a long time. Big C Sports might be the only sports show in the universe that talks about God, that talks about prayer. There's a lot of people that will talk about whatever the atheist says. They'll play whatever garbage music that denigrates women, and they'll make those guys rich and famous for denigrating women, and then they'll even have them on a talk show, and they make millions off of saying things that your grandmother probably wouldn't want to hear if you were saying it to her face. But they can have those guys on. So if I want to talk about God, at least give me equal time. So being told that the NFL and the CFL and NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, college sports, they're all on the pause. If you look north, the CFL, it looks like a number of possibilities that they're not considering moving the Grey Cup from November 22nd, which is where they play it. It's going to be in Regina this time. And think about it. They haven't not moved so far. It doesn't mean that they won't make any adjustments to it. But just like the Super Bowl is already set for next year in the United States, they may adjust the season. There was a time in the NFL that we weren't playing 16 games. There were times they were playing 12 games. There were times they were playing 9 games back in the day when Jim Brown was rushing for 1,000 yards a year. So there's always hope. I just hope that whatever I do for my family, I want to keep them abreast of what's going on. So in Canada, after canceling some combines in Edmonton, in Montreal several weeks ago, the league announced today that it was postponing the CFL draft until at least the start of training camp, and that's going to be April 30th. So everybody's going through something. We're here up on the end of the month of March, and we know that everybody is looking for a solution to what it's going to take to keep their family safe. You got to wash your hands. You got to wash them really good. I hear 20 seconds is the rule. And also, at the same time, you want to make sure you wash your face. If you got a fever, don't go into work. I mean, you can't send your kids to school now because it seems like every school is closed, and there are reasons for that. So we all can do our part. So those fans that want to call in and say, I can't believe you guys are not talking about who won a game, they could even make sure they're safe and their family's safe if they just take their head out of the sand. FIFA sees duty to help as the pandemic ravages soccer finances. As the economic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic ripples across the world football, which is soccer, FIFA sees a duty to offer a lifeline from its vast cash reserves. Now, when you think about people standing or waiting in food lines, they were showing some things all over the country. People are in line to get food, because they don't have it. Maybe some people haven't been able to work. They work in the service industry. You're not getting tips. If you're getting furloughed, that government money's not there yet. That's supposed to be, from what I'm hearing, sometime by the end of April. So as you have professional sports leagues, talks are underway about how the governing body will fund and be distributed with the global players, those unions where the players are represented, appealing for cash to be targeted at the smaller markets rather than the elite end of the game. COVID-19 is really, it's bothered everybody. Everybody has been affected in some way, from Barcelona and Juventus players have to taken play cuts. There's including Uruguay. There's so many things that are not just United States centric, and that's what I love about doing Big C Sports. As I often say, the number one sports show in the universe. Big C has its own media. We're one of the top 1% of shows on the iHeartRadio podcast as well. We're on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and you can ask Alexa almost everywhere you go. You can hear the Big C Sports platform pop up. Now, FIFA is trying to show why it has amassed reserves. It last reported at $2,745,000,000 to help soccer when it's in most need. There's a lot of money in the sports world. I'm so happy that people are always trying to find a solution, especially our sports teams. And just because they have a lot of money, it doesn't mean that they are up to what's going on in the world, and they're taking some of their money to make sure that people have a good platform. I think that's so important. Now, as I mentioned that, Barcelona will not be able to reach, it's almost obtuse to say this, but Barcelona will not be able to reach the record revenues because of the coronavirus at $1.05 billion. And I'm sure that makes a lot of people that are, it makes a lot of Spaniards feel bad. The sports teams have to make adjustments, just like people in food lines. And I know with everything that's going on, if you don't have food in your belly, it doesn't matter what your beliefs are. It doesn't matter what the government says. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. Getting food in the belly so you can feel better, you can be healthy, that makes everybody feel much better. In Madrid and Barcelona had been on track for a record season of revenues with $1.1 billion for the first time in club history. Now you might think, well, that's kind of greedy, like the movie that Gordon Gekko played in, Wall Street. Well, greed is good depending on who you are. It's not good for everybody. But when you're altruistic and you want to give to other people, I applaud clubs that do that. So a month later, the club is bracing for the losses caused by coronavirus pandemic, and they're just looking for ways to take care of their people. Everybody needs to do that. There were a series of interviews by Spanish media today that were on record pace in February and well above their expectations to make that $1.1 billion. So they're even billionaires are affected by this. It's not just people, standing in line to get food and sometimes clothing and shelter. It affects a lot of people. And so when you have a billionaire corporation, they don't want to just pay out money if it's not coming in. Most of that money comes in from TV revenue. And if they don't have the TV revenue, then obviously they can't pay it out. So everybody's affected. Everybody has to pay a little bit of the price. Now, what I want to do also, Big C, I know sometimes over the years working in finance, when people have financial issues, and we've all been at some point of financial issues or health issues or relationship issues or whatever those issues, people have had them. But this is what I'm gonna bring it up, and it kind of makes me feel a little bit, upset about it. But we got to talk about it. There's a British boxer had his license suspended over posting a video making fun of domestic violence. Now, he said he was just joking. Now, I know personally, in my past, have known people who dealt with domestic violence. And it still boggles my mind to this day to wonder, why do you stay? And I've heard every excuse. Well, they grew up like that. They saw it in their family, so obviously that's what they're used to. I've never had anyone harm me. I mean, I've been in my share of fights. I think I'm undefeated. Except for the one time I got knocked up by my brother. He gave me a sucker punch. Todd knows what I'm talking about. But everybody knows somebody who's been through something. So British boxer Billy Joe Saunders, he had his boxing license suspended. This is in Wales. It was suspended Monday after he published on social media in which he appeared to condone domestic violence amid the coronavirus outbreak. I know Big C and I talked about this. People use whatever excuse they want to use to put hands on somebody. No one should ever have a right to punch anybody. If you wanna have that solution solved, I've always told every victim, I'm not trying to seem like I'm being simplistic, but if you pick up the phone and you call 911, that person doing the abuse, they often change when 2 or 3 police officers show up with guns, a badge, pepper spray, and handcuffs. It will melt the toughest person who talks tough when he has you alone. And I know this guy made a video about it, which shows me, even though he apologized about it, it seemed too common. He came out of the womb of a woman. A woman gave birth to him. Unless he's a test tube baby. So what man even makes fun of that, of a woman being beaten up? We know that it happens a lot. And again, there are women who fight in the MMA. It's all fair in love and war. They both have gloves. They have a referee there. There are women who box. Layla Ali, she's a great boxer when she was doing her thing. You have so many, Holly Holmes, great fighter, MMA. Everybody has a skill. They go to work. They do it. But that's different than when you have someone hitting you against your will. I just say don't put up with it. I don't want to seem simplistic. For anyone going through that garbage, just pick up the phone and call 911. It melts the toughest person. So the WBO super middleweight champion, he filmed himself working out, and he offered men advice on how to hit their female partners during the lockdown. All he has to do is go into the ring and fight someone bigger, stronger, and tougher than he is, and see what it's like to get beaten up. I mean, I don't know of men who make jokes of that without having some of that real enmity towards women in their past. And so, as you see women ogling around people like that, you just got to know that there are people who will do that. It should never be acceptable. I don't know any man that would allow that to happen to his own daughter right in front of him. So British Boxing Board of Control said that it has investigated Saunders' comments and decided to suspend his license under the regulations for misconduct. The body says that a hearing will take place and at a time and venue to be confirmed as soon as possible. He is able to fight. He's unbeaten in 29 fights, so he's a very good fighter and was close to being at a fight with Saul Canelo Alvarez in Las Vegas before the outbreak of the pandemic. So, again, the reason I'm saying this is because he's showing contrition now. He said that he will make a donation of about $30,000 to a domestic abuse charity. But if he really can understand the power of his words for those women who are beaten up, and I believe that domestic violence happens, I don't even want to say this number is real, but I've heard as often as every minute, or sometimes people say every 20 seconds, which it seems hard to believe, but who am I to disagree with that? So everybody has their thoughts on that. I would just hope that the money, it pays for whatever you're going to pay for, but even having that thought, somebody told him it was okay to have that thought, and somebody told him it was okay to think that way, and that's why he was able to do that. And I've heard men say that before because that's how they were raised. They thought it was okay, and it should never be okay to do that. That's my thought, so I wanted to get on my soapbox about that. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. Man, a lot of sports companies are doing the Big C pause. We'll take a Big C timeout. We'll be right back in just a moment. We're going to talk more about sports and how the rich people are also affected by coronavirus. We are back from what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I love are by Google. And Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity. Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also launching a real estate listing channel already underway in some markets in this great country. The goal is simple: hire 100 or recruit 100 real estate brokers to list their properties on TV. You can also get your loans on television. A lot of people right now, because of social distancing, are being told don't do open houses. So if you can't do an open house, how do you do the listing? Well, some people are putting their listings on the internet. You can go online and look at properties, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have an exclusive channel that will let you go and see properties on television, that to me, McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it. They don't play the Super Bowl on the internet. They play it on TV. Same as the World Series, same as the NBA Finals, the NHL Finals. They all do it on TV when they can. You can do the same thing with your real estate. Really looking forward to that with the Big C team. Man, I know the coronavirus pandemic is out there. Stay abreast of it. Know what's going on. Today is the last day of March of 2020. We know that people got to make sure that you keep your family safe. Don't be like some of the knuckleheads that just want to keep their head in the sand. You know, funny thing is I got something in the mail. It was from an insurance company called Geico. They sponsor some of the shows that we do. And it says you can save $500 or more on your car insurance. Find out how inside. Contact your local agent, blah, 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 blah. And that's fun. I mean, when you hear that somebody sends you an envelope that you can save money, pick up the phone and call them. I picked up the phone. They actually were able to save me a little bit of money. But, you know, it's all fair in love and war. I love how sports and politics is mixing. I know some people don't like that, but I love it. In fact, NASCAR is to get involved with producing protective masks to help fight coronavirus. Isn't that something for people that don't want to hear sports and politics? Well, the political world, we have Democrats, Republicans, whether it's Joe Biden or POTUS, and they're both telling you how they would solve this problem. And, you know, fortunately, they're talking about invoking medical science, whether it's Surgeon General Jerome Adams or Dr. Fauci or whoever is out there, the leading researchers that deal with infectious disease. And we want to make sure, because what they tell us, if you listen to what they're saying, if it's not backed by medical science, it may not be the best thing for your family. So make sure you get that done. But what I really love about the sports world, in fact, the sports universe, as I was telling Big C often, that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and it will bring people together where the clergy hasn't been able to do it. Politics really hasn't been able to do it. And you wonder, sometimes I listen to Sean Hannity talk on television, and he's like a linear thinker. He doesn't know that the guy that he bows down to called this a Democratic hoax. So he loses credibility for people that read. But everybody has their own opinion. But this is what I love about what's going on. Charlotte, North Carolina, there's 5 3D printers that I heard about 5 years ago, 3D printers. I heard about it from some guys that were doing business in Malaysia. And so NASCAR's Research and Technology Center, it delivered in February and installed less than 2 weeks ago, are typically focused on, you know, parts for cars and working on outdated and updating the stock cars. Now, when racing came to a stop March 13th, according to the Associated Press, amid the coronavirus pandemic, there were a handful of NASCAR engineers that wondered if the printers could be used to address the shortage of personal protective equipment for healthcare workers. They call it PPE, and everybody knows that more and more we're going to hear more about companies that step up their game, and they do whatever they can to not shut down their facilities, but to use their facilities to be a solution and not just something that is going to go on pause until they're able to get back to work. So I really appreciate NASCAR being a part of that. NASCAR is also donating the face shields as part of the Charitable Community Act that in fact the series does every year. Really appreciate them. The sanctioning body is Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota, as well as many other companies. NASCAR's 3 manufacturers, as companies from the automotive industry, have been pivotal in the production of the PPE during this global crisis. So even for those guys that call a sports show, and they say, I can't believe that you're talking about politics on a sports show, Well, even guys, maybe some of the guys who made his car that he may be driving around in, they're even getting involved because they want to do our best as a country to all pull together. So for the next 100 days from Michigan Component Plants, Ford is also providing engineers and facilities to assist in 3M's production on air purifying respirators. If you're a doctor on the front line, and we were talking about that all over the week, I mean, everybody's, no matter where you've been in the world of sports, everybody's talking about what doctors can do and the hospitals can do and the first responders can do, because they're the front line and they're the ones who keep everybody safe. To me, that's so important. That's more important than talking about who won a game. And so I just applaud them, because that's how we all got to stay informed. If we can reach out to every industrialized nation and have them at least do some part of producing ventilators and masks that people can wear before they get ill, that would make a big difference and maybe a bigger dent in what's going on and help solving this part of the coronavirus outbreak. Now, some athletes, they have their own way of getting their mind off of things. I think it was Kevin Durant, and then Young. They're highlighted players in an NBA 2K tournament. That's on the network. People can look at that if they want to. The Last Dance is a look at Michael Jordan's last title, starts, and that's going to start April 19th, I believe, on the mothership. So there's people doing things. I mean, who doesn't love Michael Jordan, what he's done in the past? At the same time, I would still love to see the mothership and other programs, if they have a heart for it, be contemporary also. It's one thing to watch an erstwhile athlete and see what he went through 30 years ago, from college all the way up through professional sports. But I doubt it. I mean, everybody has their own relief. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would still love to see some of our sports brethren take the time to do what they can in contemporary time to help people. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Associated Press, Major League Baseball, veterans get, or at least some veterans. We talked about food lines, people getting in lines for food. Some baseball players, veterans, they get a daily amount of money. It's $4,000 and up during the virus onset. New Yorkers Garrett Cole and Mike Trout, from East Coast to West Coast, guys are getting a lot of money. Other veteran major leaguers will receive about $4,000 per day or more in advance pay for the first 60 days of the season during the stoppage, because the coronavirus has hurt a lot of people's bank accounts. Money is money. You can make all you want, but when you have people in food lines and these players are getting almost $5,000 a day, they have every right to it. They negotiated those contracts. But just oppose that to food lines and first responders, where people have been contracting the coronavirus, trying to save lives, and they're asking for help. They're asking for masks. They're asking for more equipment. They're asking for whatever they can get to stay safe. And you have some athletes that are getting almost $5,000 a day. I'm not saying they don't need the money. They got it because that's the business they're in. That's just 2.5% of the almost $200,000 the New York Yankees pitcher and Los Angeles Angels outfielder were scheduled to earn each day. You get that? Each day. Almost $200,000 a day for some of these guys. Now, I'm not knocking them. If I could get the $200,000 a day, I want $200,000 a day. Everybody does. But just think about that, as we always, and I was saying to some of our sponsors, people that put every TV, radio, podcast show, they have a sponsor. That sponsorship money makes it possible to be on the air. That's why they have them. They'll say this show is sponsored by whomever it is, or before a show is called a pre-roll, or you have a mid-roll, or you have a post-roll. That sponsorship money paying that. So these athletes can do what they want to do. But why I also want to wag the tail for Big C Sports is every day that we talk about sports and we talk about real life, I hope that somewhere that history will say that we did as much or more to keep people involved in what it takes to save their own lives and to save the lives of other people too. I know there's some people that put their head in the sand. They don't want to hear that. Just tell me who won the game. But think about this, as our first responders they have a shortage of masks. They have a shortage of ventilators. And we know corporate America and the guys that own these teams, they write the check without blinking. But just think about the next time you wonder why people aren't going to some of the games when the games resume, and I'm sure they will sometime soon. Hopefully in the summertime. We just did our homage to Major League Baseball opening day. I did that last Friday. But some of these guys are making over $100,000 a day. And there are people in food lines trying to get food for their kids. And they don't say anything that keeps you safe other than watch the game or your thoughts and prayers with people. But with a platform like that, they could do a lot more. I mean, everybody has their own opinion. You know, less veteran players receive smaller amounts as specified in the agreement, from $16,000 to $60,000, depending on the contract. Major League Baseball has delayed opening day until right now we're hearing mid-May at the earliest, and will remain unclear if or when the season will start. So everybody knows you got to do your part. Money's not the same for everybody, but some of our heroes are making almost $100,000 to $200,000 a day for their contracts. And you wonder how someone can sign a $400 million contract or $300+ million contract. That money is coming from someplace. But they're all affected by the same air that we all breathe. Oakland A's minor league manager is on a ventilator due to coronavirus. Oakland Athletics minor leaguer, his name is Webster Garrison, thoughts and prayers with he and his family, hospitalized in Louisiana on a ventilator with the coronavirus, according to his fiance. And again, I was telling you about a knucklehead that called into a sports show and said, I can't believe you guys are talking about coronavirus. Can't you just read me scores? Well, minor league manager for the Oakland A's, maybe that caller can call in and offer thoughts and prayers to Webster Garrison. Nikki Trudeau posted in her latest update Monday night on social media. She said he's 54 years old, former major leaguer, still requires a ventilator to fight COVID-19, and that he had not declined in his battle. It's not getting worse. He's fighting hard and making some small milestones. So that's for people who believe that athletes are not people. Just shut up and dribble. You know, let's get on a cruise ship so we can play a game. Because my head's in the sand. If my head's in the sand, how would I know that there's the manager for the Oakland Athletics minor league team, Webster Garrison, that's suffering from that? I've even heard guys say, well, you can test everybody and their family members. You can test them all and then go play a game. Didn't really say anything about science. But everybody has to deal with things the way they want to. It's called fight or flight. But Garrison managed the Class A Stockton Ports last season. He was expected to manage the Arizona Fall in the Fall League this year. He played 5 games for the A's in 1996. He never got a hit in 10 plate appearances. But at the same time, he's in the biggest fight right now. And I know he's going to be okay. I believe, and thoughts and prayers are with him. Thank goodness we have medical science. And thank goodness that medical science is not like some callers to sports shows that are so dumb, they only want to know who won a game even though everybody's on hiatus. That's the thing about reading. I always implore people to read, especially young people. Don't just be one of those guys that says, I don't want to hear what's going on. My head's in the sand. So everybody has their own thoughts of what it's going to take to make them feel better. I also want to look at some of the silly moments and remarks and comments that have been made in the sports universe. Some of the silly things that people have said, and I'm one of them. I say silly things all the time. It's unintentional. But just for a little levity, I know people are going through challenges. There was a player changed his name to Meta World Peace, and he tweeted out, this was back in the day, he said, Happy Labor Day, enjoy it. But the part of Labor Day is that you're supposed to take the time to relax and not get out and do anything. Major League Baseball in the poorhouse. We just talked about some of the athletes that are getting about $100,000 a day, based on their contract. And one athlete, his name is Pete Incaviglia, he former Texas Ranger outfielder, on why baseball players are not overpaid. He says, quote, people think we make $3 million and $4 million a year. They don't realize that most of us only make about $500,000 a year. If that's something to make you laugh, if you're a little bit out of touch, that's all fair in love and war. There's one by the great Lee Corso. I love listening to his broadcast work on the mothership, especially for college football. Lee Corso was quoted as saying, Hawaii doesn't win many games in the United States. Well, Hawaii is part of the great United States, the great Lee Corso, on why teams from Hawaii perform poor against teams in the mainland. Well, Hawaii is part of the United States. It's all fair in love and war. Also, a great baseball player A-Rod needs therapy. And he quoted as saying, therapy can be a good thing. It can be very therapeutic. It's amazing how people can say some silly things. And we're all in those moments where we say things that we can't believe we said them. I tend to do them all the time. Alex Rodriguez, the New York Yankees third baseman at the time, now you can see him doing some work on television, does a very fine job for baseball. Now, one of my favorite, one of those silly moments, what we call maybe silly things that people say, by the great Dizzy Dean. He thought it was pretty close. Quoted, the game was a lot closer than the score indicated. Major League Baseball Hall of Fame pitcher Dizzy Dean. That was after a 1-0 score. So how can it be closer than anticipated? They really don't have 0-0 scores in baseball. There's a player by the name of Ron Atkinson, a former soccer player and television pundit, and he was quoted as saying, well, either side could win or it could be a draw. Isn't that the case? Either side can't win in sports. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to realize that we all say silly things. I know I've said my share. One of the greatest media personalities that I've loved listening to over the years is the great Dick Vitale. I really miss, his work that he does with basketball, college basketball. Dick Vitale, he said in one of the quotes of about a three-point shooting, he said, I'm telling you, man, to be able to stroke it like that, it must be some kind of great feeling, okay? A lot of teenagers are in the room, but he was talking about a three-point shooting shot, as a lot of other guys understand what that means. Here's another quote that might make you laugh and hopefully add some levity. Steve Largent sincerely missed Ringo. Seattle Seahawks wide receiver, Hall of Famer Steve Largent, explained which of his records he'll cherish the most after retiring for football. And he said probably the Beatles' White Album, not the fact that he was one of the best receivers in the NFL. It's all fair in love and war. We all have our own thoughts about how we all can deal with things. Everybody knows we all have a way of dealing with things, clarity, to make things be more laughable, or that we can all get along with it. I don't want to stand next to this guy I love Mike Tyson as a fighter. Funny thing, Mike Tyson, one of his moments in time to say something that people consider, maybe silly from back in the day. Mike Tyson, he's quote unquote says, they all said, what was wrong with me? Former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson said, responding to a question about him suffering from depression, low self-esteem, and problems with anger management. I mean, he all had, I guess, whenever Mike Tyson was coming into a ring, he was one of the fighters that I remember you always wanted to prepare for the fight, kind of a tailgate. It's not like now for the pay-per-view guys, if the fight's coming on, people don't really tailgate anymore. They just get together, do their pay-per-view, and they'll watch a fight. But I remember when Mike Tyson was going to fight, it was a lot like watching a Super Bowl. Maybe not as big, but I remember guys would get together and barbecue and do a lot of things to make themselves laugh. That's always, to me, something I think about. And I remember he was on some type of chemical, just from what I heard for the radio announcement. He said, they got me on this stuff to keep me from killing y'all. Is talking to some of the reporters. And I remember that as Mike Tyson was intimidating at times, not only in the ring, but also in media, if you were brave enough to go have an interview with him when he was back in the day knocking people out. So there's a Dennis Rodman, that's one of the best basketball players that I enjoyed watching back in the day. The master chemist. Chemistry is quote unquote, chemistry is a class you take in high school or college where you figure out that 2 + 2 is 10 or something, okay? That's what his said. That was his quote, that 2 + 2 is 10 or something. Maybe he was having some libations before that conversation and that comment was made. The great Yogi Berra on weather. It ain't the heat, it's the humility. It's the humility, not humidity. Again, this stuff makes me laugh. And we all need a little bit of laughter, especially in this time of year. I know everybody loves it. And sometimes you just got to have a way to get past some of the things that made us all, sometimes cry. Or I remember listening to the late, great Richard Pryor, and he had a skit where he was out hunting, and he was looking for a deer, and he said to his friend, give me the rifle. And his friend said, what rifle? He said, the rifle I gave you back in the car. He said, well, how did I know you wanted me to bring the rifle? It's not my rifle. He said, well, if you don't have the rifle, we're in trouble. He said, how you figure we're in trouble? It's just a deer. And Richard Pryor said, I know, but there's a bear behind you. And his friend said, well, which way you going to run? So to me, that was funny. That was a moment of levity. We all need that, and I'm telling you, everybody has to have those moments in time where it makes you laugh. The great Gene Stallings' biggest weakness, quote, I guess that makes our biggest weakness the lack of strength. That's the great Gene Stallings, the Texas A&M football coach, after hearing TCU head coach Abe Martin claim that his team's biggest strength is his lack of weakness. Everybody has their own way of looking at things, and then also mixing words, and oftentimes it makes you laugh, and sometimes it makes you cry. Major League Baseball rookie drops the ball after being asked what he had gotten out of his rookie season in the league. The former MLB outfielder said, he replied, about $120,000. So, that's poor man's money compared to what guys are getting in today. I just told you that guys like Mike Trout in his regular season makes him almost $200,000 a day, and that's his contract. And I mean, everybody says, oh well, it's just money, but it's all fair in love and war. I love figuring out what makes people laugh and try to do it myself, especially in times like this. The great Jerry Rice tries to show humility, quote unquote. I feel like I'm the best, but when you're not going to get me to say that, he just said that, Jerry Rice. But Jerry Rice was the best. He's the best wide receiver. I know Randy Moss had his things too, but it's all about the man that scored the most touchdowns in NFL football. That would be the great Jerry Rice. So everybody has their own things that can make you laugh. Sometimes it can make you cry. Jose Canseco, no longer in right field, quote unquote. They always put the smart guys out in right field. That's where I used to play. So that's the former Major League Baseball slugger Jose Canseco, played for the Oakland A's during the Bash Brother days of Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco. And I remember he said that a lot of people in baseball were doing some kind of juicing, and maybe he was right, and a lot of people hated him for saying that. Now, Alex Rodriguez feels, quote unquote, I feel very Dominican, Alex Rodriguez, on which nation he would play for in the first World Baseball Classic. Well, as a Dominican, that would make a lot of sense. RMF, Randy Moss Financial LLC. When you're rich, you don't write checks. Straight cash, homie. The great Randy Moss talked about that when asked how he'll pay for his NFL fine for a sportsmanlike celebration. He said straight cash, homie. I still think that was one of the funniest things and funniest times that I recall. So everybody loves, hopefully, sometimes that it makes you laugh, it makes you cry at times, and everybody knows that you got to find that moment of levity. I know we're dealing with coronavirus. I know sometimes it can wear you down. Sometimes you just want to keep your head in the sand, but that's not what our families need. We can all do what it takes to stay a little bit safer in our world, and I want to always do my part to make sure I can. Now, this is something quoted by Terrell Owens with teammate issues, quote, don't say I don't get along with my teammates, I just don't get along with some of the guys on my team. That's the great Terrell Owens, former NFL wide receiver Terrell Owens. I remember when I was covering the 49ers for Fox Sports, it was a locker room interview after the game. They had just played the Green Bay Packers. It was a great catch where Steve Young got back the pass, and the great Joe Starkey, I was in the press box with John Madden and Summerall, and he said, Owens, 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 Owens. That's when Steve Young threw the touchdown pass to Terrell Owens at Candlestick Park, and the 49ers went on to win that game and advance in the playoffs. When I remember that, in that day, Terrell Owens had a green suit, a light green suit, in the locker room, and he looked really sharp, and I just remember so many great days of being around the sports business. It's always been something that made me happy since I was a little boy, playing punt, pass, and kick since I was 8 years old. So hopefully, today's show, I just wanted to bring some levity to people, that everybody has that moment in time that you just got to find some levity. Richard Pryor was great for finding levity, making you laugh, and I always know that in parts of society where people are just kind of sick, emotionally sick, get out, exercise, do something, listen to some comedy if you can, and laugh. They say it's really some good medicine. So hopefully Big C Sports can bring you some of that levity, and it may make you feel a little bit better today as we deal with what's going on in this beautiful March 31st, 2020. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs over the universe. Also launching a real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020. Already underway in some markets. Really looking forward to bringing that too and being a part of that. You can get your loans done as well. You know, McDonald's advertises on TV. Car dealerships do it. Even sports teams, when they actually are not on pause, they all do it. We all do whatever we can to be a part of that and bring some levity to the life of a lot of people. And I love doing that with Big C Sports. And as far as I can see, no matter what's going on in this great country, we've gotten through a month of March. It's been an up and down month for a lot of people, but there's a lot of good things out of it too. If you look about New York on the Hudson, Navy hospital ship, the comfort, it arrives to add some relief to the hospital workers and the first defenders, the department, the fire department, police, nurses, doctors. We all got to do what we can to contribute, to help out. I do my part on the Big C Sports Show by just trying to bring some levity at times, also talking about what's really going on in the world of sports and in the world of news. I never want to be an obtuse company that pretends that nothing's going on in our society. So I really appreciate that. I love watching a news podcast and letting people say to people who want to know what's going on in society, how to stay safe, how to keep their families better off, and I want to do our part with that. To me, that's so important. I love being a part of it every day as much as humanly possible. So I'll keep doing that as long as God gives me breath, and there's a sports world that we can all still hopefully look forward to. There's also some talk about baseball having a 6-man rotations and piggybacking starters and pitching during the post-virus once this is over. I know baseball will bring a lot of us back together. The Browns, Associated Press reports, the Browns signed free agent Claiborne to a 2-year deal. The Steelers are not concerned about limit pre-draft preparations. And there's so much going on in the world of sports that everybody wants to even play basketball on a ship and do that at your own peril. I'd rather trust Dr. Fauci and what the medical science is saying about that. But everybody has their desires to see sports come back again. But we got to be healthy doing it. I love what NASCAR is doing. They step up to produce the PPE for the COVID-19 cases. And that's just something that our hospitals need. Our doctors need that. Santa Anita joins the list of postponed Kentucky Derby preps. That's good to see that too. And the deadline extended indefinitely for Triple Crown nominations. Everybody's doing whatever they can to stay on top of this coronavirus pandemic. I hope that we can all pay attention to what's going to take to stay safe, find time to exercise. I still want to call for 1 million pastors all over the world to pray and ask for God's providence for a cure for this pandemic, the coronavirus. And I hope and pray that will actually show up. I hope and pray that we can. I know God is able. And if our scientists and our doctors can get help, then hopefully we can do our part. Big C, this is the part where I always say, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe? As you always say, we got to make sure that we keep our heads above the sand, know what's going on with your family, wash our hands 20 seconds a day, they always say. Keep your mouths clean, wash your face, whatever it takes. Make sure your children are out there also being safe. We want to make sure that we get sports back again, of course. But life still goes on whether we have sports or not. And I want to do my part, making sure that we're not just some obtuse shows and showing you replays of something that happened 30 and 40 years ago. I love going back and forth with Big C when he's not digging for gold, just talking about things that make us happy in the sports universe. As we always tell you, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, you can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to deal with that garbage on their own. As we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.